Good to see you. Good to see you. All right, your 4 minutes, sir, begins right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Dr. Theoharis. And thank you, Reverend Dr. Barber. I have to say, I come here with good news and bad news, and you already know it. But first, the good news. Because the bad news can lead us to some good if we do it right. The good news is because of your activism, Reverend Dr. Barber, because of your activism and your challenging politicians and lawmakers across the country, we won the House this past November. We won the House. We did that. We were challenged to move our feet from the town squares to the town halls, and as Dr. King said, go all the way to the ballot box. And we did, because it mattered. And I'll tell you, in the first 100 days in this new House, we updated the Voting Rights Act. We passed background checks. We passed the Equality Act. We've done a lot, and we've got a lot more to do, but here's the bad news. Those pieces of legislation are going nowhere in the Senate, and unless we get a new Senate and have a compassionate, forward-thinking leader in the White House, they're just going to stay in the House. I'm thrilled to be here today to talk to you about what we can do with this 21st century poor people's movement. And Reverend Dr. Barber, I've heard you talk a lot about poverty is not a God-made condition. It's man-made. It's something that has been policy-made. It's also something we shouldn't avoid talking about. Being poor is not immoral. What is immoral is 27 million people in America don't have health care. Is that immoral? What is immoral is that 40 million young people are in the financial quicksand of student loan debt. And it hurts young black men and women more than it hurts any other race in America. What is immoral is that 100,000 people will be shot in 2019. More of them in a black community than anywhere else, and it's the #1 cause of death for a black child in America. We don't have to live this way. We can do something about it. I'm running for president to do something about it. I'm running for president because I come from a generation that will actually do worse than generations before me. And there are a lot of people in generations before me who have said, we didn't do that well. So on healthcare, let's have a healthcare guarantee. Regardless of your income, regardless of your employer, regardless of your luck. In America, if you're sick, you should be seen. And when you're seen, you shouldn't go broke. You shouldn't stay broke. When it comes to education, I was the first in my family to go to college. And my parents are scratching their heads saying, what the hell happened? We fought so hard, we worked so hard, and you have student loan debt? $100,000 of it? And that's the real for so many people in America today, that it's deferring the dreams of the next generation. Starting a family, buying your first home, taking a good idea and being an entrepreneur in this economy. All those dreams deferred. And the fear in our communities of gun violence. So on education, before I go to gun violence, let's do this. Let's bring the student loan interest rate down to 0. Government shouldn't make a single penny off the...
That's actually your time.
Yeah, that's
I'm
my
sorry.
time?
That's your time.
I'm just firing up,
You're
Joy.
just getting started. I know. But we want to make sure that you get some questions in from the audience too. But you can incorporate those other ideas if those questions come up. But I want to bring up Bobby Fields, who has a question for you. So let's have Bobby come up, and you can go ahead and ask the Congressman a question.
My name is Bobby Fields, and I'm here with Mindy Bergeron Lawrence beside me, who is a low-wage worker from Maine. I've worked in fast food for almost 11 and a half years and currently work the night shift at McDonald's. In Tampa, Florida, where I'm from, the current minimum wage is $8.46 an hour. I became a part of the Fight for 15 and a union as a leader. because I know that there are millions just like us too across the country. Folks like us who work hard to make ends meet and contribute to their community deserve to live with dignity. As president, what will you do to ensure that everyone can earn a living wage now, not in 10 to 12 years, and to ensure that our right as workers to organize in a union is protected?
Good question.
So, Bobby, I'm with you, and I think you have dignity now. I think you have dignity in your work, but you want to have dignity in what you can provide. And there's a difference right now, because people just like you work really hard, and they have dignity and purpose in their work, but they're not taking home pay to save. They're not taking home enough pay to pay rent. They're not taking home enough in their paycheck to cover their health care costs. So what I would do as president is bring the minimum wage everywhere in America to $15. $15. Second, I would make it easier to organize in a labor union. And I'm leading by example because my campaign staff have organized as members of the Teamsters 238 movement. And third, Bobby, right now, just showing solidarity with the movement, with a 2-year-old who really likes to go to McDonald's. We're not going to go to McDonald's until they get this right. Thank you.
All right. Reverend Theoharis?
So there are 140 million people who are poor or one emergency away from poverty. And we're told over and over again that we can't do anything in the face of poverty. That is when the media pays attention. That is when politicians are willing to talk about poverty. We spend 53 cents of every discretionary dollar on the military and less than 15 cents on education and healthcare and anti-poverty programs combined. What is your position on the connection between poverty and militarism? What do you say to the lie of scarcity? And what are your proposals for immediately and fully implementing the elimination of poverty?
I believe that the tip of the spear of our national defense must be the health, education, and safety of the people in our country who may one day have to defend us, or who we are defended. So I'd start there. So when it comes to military spending, I think we can be the strongest military in the world without spending more than the next 7 countries do combined in the world. Where would I put that money? First, into schools. Under my plan, a child's destiny will no longer be defined by a child's zip code. My parents moved us around 9 times. I went to 9 different homes that we lived in 11 different schools before graduating high school. We were lucky. They fought to get us into a better school so I could have a shot to be the first in the family to go to college. But it's wrong, and too many families can't move, and so they stay in areas with crumbling schools and a low retention rate on teachers. Under my plan, school construction would be a federal infrastructure priority, meaning that it's not just local property taxes that define a child's future. It would be the federal government at the table. Second, when it comes to jobs, yes, I want to lift wages, but I also want to bring business and development to communities that need it most. I see too many communities where I've worked in as a prosecutor in Oakland or in the public defender's office while I was in law school in Baltimore, the payday lenders and the liquor stores that define a community and the commerce around them. I wrote in Congress the Main Street Revival Act. If you bring a small business into a community that's economically depressed, you can defer your payroll taxes for 3 years. So just try and bring more capital and jobs into places that need it the most. Third, when it comes to pay for our military, I would rather see us pay our personnel better and take care of our veterans after they serve than all of the money that's going to defense contractors. That disparity in America has to change.
Bishop Barber.
Thank you so much for being here. Sometimes I'm out and about, and people will say, Reverend Barber, We're with you on the Poor People's Campaign, National Call for Moral Revival, and be a politician. And then they'll immediately start talking about black people. And then they come in a room like this and they say, oh, I didn't realize that the Poor People's Campaign was organizing across every race, color, creed, sexual orientation, because we've done the math. And the math is that in terms of concentration of poverty, it's more among people of color, but in terms of raw numbers, there are 40 million more white people that are poor and low wealth than there are black. We also are taking a hard look at the South and the Sun Belt, because what we found is that in those states vote against living wages, most of the state houses, vote against health care, vote to attack immigrants, vote against women, vote against the LGBT community. Well, how do they get that power? Then we took another look and said, oh, a lot of the people that control these state legislatures and control the congressional representations from those states are the beneficiary of racist voter suppression and racist gerrymandering. They must know something. They must know that if you build a broad-based coalition in the South, that it can be transformative for the whole nation. A lot of times, it seems like progressive Democrats and others haven't figured that out. So we keep hearing all this conversation about how to run around the South, how to get elected, or how to pick out certain states like Florida, North Carolina, but not Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana to Arkansas. If, as you're running, how are you going to make that case and work in the South particularly to pull together blacks, whites, Latinos, natives, Asians in a massive coalition? That's there, it's possible, this is not impossible. Many of those states are not red states, they're unorganized states. So how are you going to work in both policy and in campaigning to go to the South, to go to the Sun Belt, to build these progressive coalitions, to have a major impact on the electoral outcomes in this country?
I'm going to show up, first and foremost, and again, leading by example. On Wednesday, I'm going to be in Tennessee. That's not early in the primary calendar, but I think it's important that we go to places like Tennessee that are not traditionally Democratic states. On Thursday, I'm going to be in Alabama. And I'm going to keep going across the South because I think the only way to win there is to go there. But I also see the structural disadvantage that we have right now with the influence of dirty money and the drawing of dirty maps. That was an important part of the For the People Act that we passed, was to strip down to the studs the Citizens United ruling, because corporations are dumping money in to silence your voices and put people in power, particularly in the states that are voting against the living wage, voting against the right to organize. We need to get rid of that structural issue. But the one that's really personal to me is to have independent redistricting commissions in every state. It's the only way someone like me is in Congress. My parents had never met a congressman until their son got elected to Congress. People like me weren't in Congress when I got there. I had $100,000+ of student loan debt. I was the first in my family to go to college. I was 31 years old. The overwhelming majority of people there were millionaires, disconnected from a lot of the problems that my generation was going through. The only way it was possible was that Californians had passed in 2010 an independent redistricting commission. I ran against a 40-year incumbent in my own party to win. There's only a few states in the whole country that take out the drawing of maps away from politicians who protect themselves and their families. So we have to make sure that everyday, ordinary people who live this struggle, are connected to what our dreams are in Congress. And I think that means get rid of dirty maps and dirty money.
Let me follow up a little bit, as a son of the South, because, and respectfully, even if you have an independent commission in the South, if you don't deal with racism, you still will have racism impacting how the maps are drawn. And one of the things we're concerned about is, are candidates willing to talk openly about racism and its connection to poverty, ecological devastation, the war economy? Because if somebody says the N-word, say on Capitol Hill, or we have a Charlottesville, everybody says, I'm against that, and should be. The problem is not cultural racism, but policy racism, where somebody never calls you the N-word, but they pass policies rooted in racism, but then the policies they pass actually hurt more white people. And until that's unpacked openly. So here's the last part of my question. Are you willing as a candidate, and how will you say to all of the people planning the debates, we cannot have another debate for president, a season of debate, where we don't have at least one of those debates committed to deal with systemic policy racism, not how you feel in your heart, but the heart of your policies, connected to poverty, connected to ecological devastation, connected to militarism. And how will you fight to say we must have at least a debate? We need more than one, but at least one where these issues are center place, because in the last time, 26 debates, not one of them was even on the systemic racism or voter suppression, and not one was on poverty, despite 140 million people in poverty, and despite 26 states having passed racist voter suppression laws since 2010. We have to get out of this anemic conversation, and will you push for that, and how will you do it?
Yes, I will push for that, Reverend. And you have already been pushing for that. I think you referred to it before as, the political violence that you see, where the gun safety measures that we have in our community, that's political violence when you allow assault weapons in our communities or the handguns into our cities and do nothing about it. The cost, or the outrageous cost of healthcare, is political violence because it hurts in a more pronounced ways communities of color. But as you pointed out, it's not just communities of color. It's a lot of the people that are in the South who are affected by it. It's political violence when failure to address climate change brings unseasonable flooding to places like Houston or Miami, where the first debate's going to be called. So yes, I will be a voice for that. I'm calling for that right now. We should have a debate. I think it would be best served in the South, in a non-democratic state, to go there and show up and say we care about these issues and allow our candidates to put forth our ideas.
A two-parter, just to follow up first on this issue. Why do you suppose that the way that the Democratic debate is structured is so fixated on the middle class, which is important, obviously, the middle class is important, but if 140 million people out of 326 million people are poor or low income, why isn't that a top of mind issue in the Democratic Party?
It should be. I can't speak for why it is or isn't, but it should be, and those are the people I talk to and that I listen to and engage with. And again, in many ways, growing up paycheck to paycheck with my parents, living with family members, living with my grandparents, or living with aunts and uncles as we moved around, those are the people that we grew up with. Hardworking Americans who, just like Bobby, they're in quicksand, and they wonder every month, if they're going to have enough at the end of the month to pay the bills. And so I see those people because I grew up with those people. But yes, we should devote more forums on those issues.
And just to follow up, also, you're obviously from California, which is a state that has a very large immigrant population, but also is on the leading edge of this demographic change of America becoming a majority non-white nation. How do you're a white politician, fight the fact that within a lot of communities, the immigration issue and fear of a brown wave is a much more potent issue than even 60 million white Americans in poverty? What do you do about that?
My district is one of the most diverse districts in America, and so these are my neighbors, these are my friends and my constituents. It represents that new American majority, where the majority of the people in my district are ethnic minorities in America, and we benefit from that diversity in our economy and our community. And so again, what I've always done is to show up, to listen, to learn, and then for people who don't have opportunity today, create an environment and structure where if you do work hard, it adds up, because your kid has as good of a schoolhouse as a kid in a wealthier community. If you have a healthcare issue, you're not going poor because you got a bad diagnosis. I also have a plan where I would actually reduce a business's tax rate lower than what the president has proposed if a company shares their profits with their employees. So that way too, not just a minimum wage, but lift the wages through profit sharing for any business that would share with the employees. I think that cuts across every ethnicity in a district like mine, which is going to look more and more like America in the next 20 years, I think you have to create that opportunity.
But when you're going out and campaigning within white communities, because you've talked a lot about reaching across and trying to, bring across people who may not naturally vote Democratic, how do you make those issues that you just mentioned more powerful to them than their fears about immigration?
Can I just follow up on that? Because, and I want to push this, the Poor People's Campaign, if you know, all of our coordinating committees have to have a impacted person, a religious leader, and an advocate. And you notice, Liz is black and I'm white. And you can notice that. She's Armenian by heritage. I'm part Tuscaroran, white and black. But when it comes down to voter suppression, I'm black. But what would happen if candidates were willing to go into predominantly white communities, as this campaign does, and says, you know what, you mad because people are taking your water rights, like up in Appalachia, and you're mad because of public education cuts and the teachers leaving this community, and you're upset because the wages aren't high and the unions have been pulled out. But did you know that the people that get elected that do this to you only get elected because of racialized voter suppression? What if the candidates were saying to women, did you realize that in these states, the states that are voting against women's rights, the people get that power because of racist voter suppression? Same thing with the LGBT community. So if we are willing to see that and unpack it, and it's going to take some politicians willing to unpack that openly and honestly, in order for folk to say, and I'm a preacher, but this is what happened. We were in one community, and we put this map up in a predominantly white audience, and one guy said, damn. And that was like an epiphany for him. He was like, you mean to tell me they've been lying to me? They've been lying to me about voter integrity. They've been lying to me, and what they've really been doing is using a race line around voting to get elected, and once they get elected, they then push policies that are hurting us in this community. And we said, mm-hmm. And he said, I'm in the campaign. I'm ready to organize with the Poor People's Campaign. How will you are you willing as a politician to push others in the Democratic Party, since you are a Democrat, to stop tiptoeing around the issue? Because America can handle the truth.
Yes, they can. Yeah. I do want to say, I don't want to give too much of an equivalent, though, to what white Americans experience and the generational suffering that I see and want to do something about in the black community. And I understand what you're saying, because we want white Americans bought in who, they're getting screwed by a top floor economy right now where all the benefits go to the top floor. But I don't want to see that as a reason to be let off the hook for a responsibility to make sure that, particularly in a lot of the cities that I've been to, especially in the last 6 weeks to address gun violence, I see like a more pronounced effect of just generational suffering and a lack of attention and resources there. And
well, let me say, we're not talking about letting off the hook. Yeah. We're talking about making sure you catch the whole fish. Yeah. So we're not talking about letting nobody off the hook. And what we're saying is, you can't fix this country and deal with the issue of poverty as long as it's racialized. And that's what's happened too long. It's been made, many people have been made to think it's the black problem, or because black people and brown people are getting something free, you're hurting, and we have to cut through all of that. So the way you talk about it is, the concentration of poverty is higher in the black and brown community, and the historic problem. But the actual raw numbers is higher in the white community. And if the people that are fighting living wages and health care, I don't mean to preach, and cutting public education, if they are cynical enough to be together, we better be smart enough to come together. That's what we're trying to say. And asking a candidate, are you willing to say that, not just in this room, but to America?
Yes, and I've seen the value in my district of intersectionality, where people of different colors come together, work hard, the community does better, and it turns out at the end of the day, you have more in your bank account. And to just come back to your point, Joy, because I've seen the benefits of that we don't have to fear people who don't look like us. We don't have to fear this brown wave. People aren't flocking away from California. They're coming to California because the economy is doing so well, and we are the most diverse economy in America. And so you can't say, well, California's economy is raging and doing great. I mean, there's certainly inequality that has to be addressed, but we're doing better than most states. You can't say that and then discount what's contributing to it, which I think is our diversity.
So just a quick follow-up there. We were just in Pacoima, California, where 1 in 4 kids in the schools are homeless. There's a lot of people that are not doing okay in California. What is your plan to do something around not just California, but the whole nation, because you're trying to run for the nation?
I know the homeless issue fairly well. I have a very close family member who was homeless for a long time, and myself and other family members spent a lot of time on the streets of San Francisco looking for him, putting him into treatment centers, seeing him fail out, and then going and finding him again, seeing him go to jail, get him out of jail. And I saw the failures of the way that we address homelessness. First, one of the principal causes of homelessness is addiction. And a jail should never be a way to treat addiction. The criminal justice system is not the way to treat addiction. So I would invest, in decentralized, addiction resources, not just at a hospital, but at our churches, at our schools, at our firehouses. Give them the resources to treat addiction. I also saw with the veterans community, it was that they had a lot of skills that were useful in their service, but we didn't do a good enough job as a community in transferring those skills to work and making sure that they were taken care of for their PTSD, the traumatic brain injuries that they had, again, decentralizing the resources rather than putting them in one place. Finally, mental health, again, another root cause of homelessness. And too many people that I have worked with have to go 30 to 45 minutes away to get mental health treatment. I would rather put those resources in our churches and our schools, in our communities, so that you don't have to go too far to get the help you need. I think that can go a long way.
All right, and look at that, perfectly on time. Look, you finished right at 0-0. Stuck the landing. Thank you very much.